Great. So I am here with the great Arjan Singh Bhullar. Before the fight 164 on the 1st of March. Arjan, I should ask you, how are you feeling much before this fight? You think you have a month?
Yeah, I feel great. I'm in Las Vegas right now, where my training camp is, and feel good, feel loose, feel right where my body needs to be physically and mentally.
Got it. Okay. And this is really interesting because I mean, in the wake of your previous fight, right, with Anthony, and there it was definitely a defeat, but it wasn't like it was definitely one of the tougher fights for him, right? Very evidently, because this was very few of the times where he's even gone into a second round and a third round and so on, right? So, do you feel confident coming out of that victory, coming out of even though it's a defeat, slightly more confident?
No, I thought I was going to beat him. Um, so my confidence is the same as it was heading into that. I feel I can beat Amir, and that's the fight that we have right now, and I can't wait to go prove that right.
Perfect. Okay. That's very interesting. And so you're definitely, a very celebrated fighter, at least in India, right? And of course, across the world, respectively. So I want to know from you, because there are very few Indians competing at a very elite level, the level that you are as former heavyweight champion. And I want to know how it feels to, first of all, be a front runner in the sport. And secondly, be a front runner in your own aspect of being a mixed martial artist fighter.
You know what? It feels good. It always, anytime you can be the first to do anything, it's special. It stays in the history books forever, and that's cool. And I'm not, I've never been one to just participate. I want to be the best. And I think my pursuit of being the best has allowed me to have a lot of success. So, and with that comes responsibility. I try to help and out for the next crop of fighters. Anyone that has questions or needs guidance and this and that, I always try to be there for them.
Perfect. I was seeing one of your earlier interviews, right, where you made a conscious choice to obviously switch from wrestling, which was your childhood upbringing, thanks to your dad and thanks to your family, and into move into MMA, which is which I thought was very interesting, because I think there comes a certain point where you already have a certain set of skills that come through, through genetics and through your upbringing, but then you realize that's not a path that you want to tread on, and you want to pivot into a different path. I want to know the moment that you were in where you made that conscious choice to switch into MMA. And secondly, I want to know, how was it perceived by the family that brought you up in the MMA background, in the wrestling background?
Yeah, no, I had my mind made up heading into the Olympics. After the Commonwealth Games and before the Olympics, right around there, I knew I was done with wrestling. Um, inside, I wanted something else. I felt there was more for me in life than just wrestling, and I felt the platform I wanted, the opportunities I wanted were in MMA. So, that's sort of when that mental switch happened. And right after the Olympics, I ended up going that way. And with the family and stuff, yeah, it came off as a shock to them. It's not something I really talked about, or if I did, maybe they didn't take it seriously. And yeah, they weren't supportive. But end of the day, it's my life. It's not their life. I don't tell them what to do in their life. They're living it. They wake up every day chasing whatever it is that they want, and vice versa. And I knew, if it's true family, they'll support you anyways. But I wanted something for my life. It was my decision, my life, and I put in the work, nobody else. So it has to come from within me.
I think that message really strongly goes out to most Desi kids living in Desi families, right? Because many people have to replicate the formula that their family set in place for them, and are mostly living, burdensome lives, for lack of a better word, because of the burden that their parents have put on their shoulders. But that's something that you have obviously transcended and have moved on, right? In terms of, wanting and realizing what the path should be for your life, which is a very interesting thing to, probably pivot to the next question. Because now when you transition from, wrestling to MMA, now MMA involves a bunch of different components. It involves a fair amount of stand-up. And one question that I've always wanted to ask wrestlers who have a strong background of wrestling like yourself, when in fighting an MMA fight, now obviously, firstly, would you still consider wrestling as your stronghold, as a foundation and the strongest point of your game?
Sure. Absolutely. I've done it the longest. But it's not the part that makes me the most excited. The excited is the new stuff, and that's why I like boxing and kickboxing and that type of thing. But for sure, it's the base. The athleticism from that sport lets you do other things. It's the best base for a reason.
Right. Because here's the question that I wanted to ask. Because when you're even trying to go for a takedown when you're fighting an MMA fight, right? Now, because of a takedown, you kind of drop your hands and now you are in the apprehension of being hit, right? So I want to know from you, how do you personally handle this challenge?
And the body is very adaptable. It can do amazing things if you let it and if you push it. Repetitions, practice. When you see it under the bright lights, it's not the first time I'm doing it. I've done it thousands of times, and the body's used to it. And it's second nature by the time it's fight night.
Yeah, I think this brings into mind something else that you had mentioned earlier, because I think you mentioned that, you most of your scars are in training, right?
Say again?
Most of your scars, the battle scars that you get, are in training, as opposed to the real
Correct.
fight on fight day, right?
Correct.
Has it gone too far in a training camp that has probably tired you out in when you're actually fighting?
No, that's the beauty of coming from a high level sport. When you reach the Olympics and the pinnacle of a sport, you figure that out already. You know your body, of how far to push and what you need in training, and you learn how to win and learn how to train. All those lessons were already learned in wrestling. I just had to reapply it with a different skill for MMA. That's all.
Great. Now, when you're fighting Ali Akbari, now he's obviously coming off of a victory, but like you mentioned right at the start, right, that your confidence level is the same even post your previous fight and even pre your previous fight, right? Do you ever feel that would ever have a psychological advantage in your opponent's side?
If what?
uh, because he's coming off of a victory and you're coming off of a loss. Do you feel that would motivate you to push yourself harder?
Yes and no. Even if I won, you win on that night. You lose on that night. You have to prove yourself every time. That doesn't mean anything's guaranteed for the next one. Every time it's a blank slate, fresh start. That's a win or a loss. So no in terms of that. Yes, in terms of you're always looking for added motivation. And here's an opportunity to prove I am who I think I am, and to prove it against Amir, and right the ship.
Got it. And I also want to come back to something you earlier mentioned, right? Which is very interesting, I thought, because you come from a very strong wrestling background, and you told me right now that the most interesting part of the game is the newer stuff. It's the boxing and the kickboxing and all of that. I was speaking to Jonathan Haggerty a while ago, and he mentioned that, even though MMA has these varied set of components, the most exciting thing for the audience is the stand-up, because everyone's anticipating a knockout. But I want to know from your side, because you speak about the audience side. I want to know from your side, why do you feel is the most interesting part of the game?
If I'm a fan, yeah, you want finishes, and the most exciting type of finish generally is a knockout. It's dramatic, it's violent, it's sudden, all of those things. Whereas, any type of finish on the ground takes a lot more skill and technique and knowledge to appreciate. Um, so for sure that. But as an athlete, any type of finish, any type of finish is it's exciting. You appreciate it because you know what it takes to get a finish. And just anyone who competes, you understand how hard it is to get in a cage and just compete. Not every man can do that. 1% of the world does that. So you have to respect every man that's able to do that.
Great. I want to move this conversation to a slightly different aspect, right, in terms of business. Now, you've obviously been a part of prestigious promotions and a bunch of different promotions at that, right? You've been part of the UFC, you've been part of ONE FC right now, but you've kept it going. You've kept it going from one promotion to another, and you're still in the fight game. Now, I want to know from you, because you're a fighter, obviously you have a team, but ultimately, independently, you are by yourself. Even in the cage, even in the ring, you are by yourself. And also, like you mentioned, even though you stay with family, who are all athletes, you have to make decisions by yourself. I want to know from you how important it is for an athlete like yourself in terms of having the independence to make business decisions, or are you reliant more on your team to help navigate you the right direction?
I'm the boss. I'm the boss of my life. All the final decisions come through me. I have good people around me. I like to get their opinion on things and that type of thing, and I trust them. Um, and I do that with every decision, but ultimately I make the decision because I have to live with the outcome.
Fair enough. That's really nice. I also want to draw the conversation because in the gym that I was working out in the UFC in the MMA gym, almost all the athletes I saw follow you, which I saw was very endearing. Because they obviously look up to you, right, as someone whom they aspire to be like, as someone who's handing them the ropes. I want to know from you if Indian MMA has and when Indian MMA has to step up, what do you think are the holes that you've identified that I think need to be filled in for us to elevate our game?
I think a few things. The training is not where it needs to be. People are excited to get signed to a big promotion like ONE FC or UFC, but it's not about getting signed. That's not the end goal for majority of fighters. It's to be the best. It's to win. It's to get titles. You can get signed and be out in a few fights and not win anything. Then what was the point? Getting signed is an opportunity. I think number one, we have to change that mindset, not celebrate just participation. We need to celebrate success. And in order to get that success, to the training environment has to change in terms of the coaches, in terms of training partners, and right now India is really lacking in terms of that. There's hubs all over the world. You got Thailand, you've got Singapore, you've got you got Russia, you got Dagestan up north there. There's a lot of opportunities, and obviously the West. But you have to jump into one of those first. When you have enough people doing that, then you bring them back to India and you create a hub there. But we need to have a hub in terms of quality training partners where there's 15, 20 guys, high level, and they know the whole complete MMA game.
Great. I want to bring this conversation back to you because you started in Canada, but of course you've trained across the world, and I want to know from you about, how did you plan your training journey very early on and even right now, because I think this is a continuous process. For each fight you put together, do you put together a different training camp? Do you put together a training camp in a different, how exactly do you plan your training camps? And if you can probably give Indian fighters a little more, nugget of your training experience about how you really pushed yourself to go to different places and acquire a different set of skills through different training camps and different coaches and different academies.
Yeah, for sure. After every camp, you reassess things. What do you need? What went well? What can you change? Um, and then you refocus for the next camp. So all my other camps I did at AKA or at home, where I brought in quality training partners into Vancouver. This is my first one. I'm in Las Vegas now, and at Extreme Couture with Francis and with Sean Strickland and a lot of these guys down here. I just felt there was a good fit. There's good quality training partners. It's close to home. It's the desert. They checked a lot of boxes. Obviously, Coach Eric Nixick, heads the training out here. This was the right one at the right time for me. That ticked a lot of the boxes that I look for. AKA in the past has been great. Especially when DC and Kane were active. That ticked a lot of boxes for me. So, loyalty is key. Loyalty is key. Can't have too many voices and too many different people around you. But you got to figure out what works for you, then stay loyal.
Great. Okay. Final set of questions. Actually, the final question. Post this fight, what plans do you have for the next step?
Post this fight, I've got a newborn that I just had a few months ago. I plan on spending time with my family and my kids that I'm away from. We sacrifice a lot to chase these dreams that we have. So I intend on making up for that. And that's all I can control in terms of my career. I have aspirations. I would like to finish out my contract. That would be the top priority for me. But the way these contracts in this game is, a lot of that's up in the promotions control rather than fighters. I can't control it, so I will focus on family.
Awesome. Arjan Bhullar, first of all, congrats on the newborn. All the best for the upcoming fight. And we at India are really looking at you. And thanks for being an inspiration. Thanks for taking the steps that you have taken to really pioneer the path. And it really means a lot, you know, and it's very endearing to watch you succeed at such a high level with the most elite athletes.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate it. And I thank everybody that continues to support me. I love you guys. Thank you for all the support and love over the years. This journey is not over. Tune in March 1st. We're putting this Iranian to sleep.
Awesome. Cheers, Arjan.
Thank you, bro.